In this video, part 2 of World War One, we're going to look at some of the long-term causes of World War One. We're going to lay them out, and then we'll discuss each one of them separately. So, what were the causes? What caused this great conflict in Europe? Well, there are several factors that stand out. Number one being the unification of Germany, alliances, militarization, industrialization, social unrest, nationalism, and also you could throw imperialism in this list as well. So first let's look at the unification of Germany. Prussian Prime Minister Otto von Bismarck unified Prussia and the German states in 1871 under Kaiser Wilhelm I, who was the grandfather of Kaiser Wilhelm II. In the previous year, Prussia had defeated France at the Battle of Sedan. This battle is going to decide the Franco-Prussian War, and it's going to end the reign of France's Napoleon III. It also forces France to cede that Alsace-Lorraine territory to Germany. A unified Germany threatens English industrial dominance. Germany also embarks on a military buildup that poses a threat to all of Europe. Germany's well-equipped, well-trained army becomes a standard by which other armies in Europe are going to be measured. Germany also builds railroads to transport troops, supplies, modernize its weaponry, and continually are going to train its troops. This becomes a threat to the rest of Europe, and so they're going to take notice of what's happening in Germany and what are they getting ready for. Well, imperialism, and today this word has negative connotation, but imperialism is going to be another one of those reasons for the Great War. Imperialism was clearly a contributing cause to World War I, and the competition for overseas possessions is going to bring European powers into conflict. In the late 19th century and early 20th century, Germany becomes more and more aggressive in its quest for imperial possessions, so possessions outside of its territorial borders that it historically possessed. In 1905, the leading imperial powers acceded to Germany's demand for a conference to dispute French control of Morocco. And although Germany is going to gain nothing, other nations are going to begin to view Germany as a threat to the stability in Europe. Britain and France are going to vie for control of areas in Africa, the Middle East, and the Indian subcontinent. And it's not going to be until the Anglo-French Entente in 1904 that the two nations are going to finally settle these colonial disputes. Many of these entangling alliances that historians often cite as a premier cause of World War I actually come about as a result of conflicts over imperialism. So grabbing territory in other countries and claiming it for your country. What you see here is a map of European control of Africa. You can look at the key, and you can tell that France has a large portion of northern Africa. It actually encompasses most of that Sahara Desert there. Germany's in green. England are your countries in yellow. Alliances, and we've already talked about this in the first video. Some of those alliances were well known, some of them were secretive. European alliances were designed to keep a balance of power. The Triple Entente between the UK, France, and Russia balanced the Triple Alliance between Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy. Belgium had placed neutrality, but made a treaty with the UK to protect it in case of an attack. And the Ottoman Empire was weak, and we already had talked about that. And it allowed Germany to control too much over its foreign policy. And as a whole, these alliances assured total peace or total war, and we know which way that's going to go, but there was nothing in between. One incident could set off a chain reaction that's going to draw all of these European countries into conflict, and we know that that's what happens. Industrialization. The Industrial Revolution is going to bring great changes to all aspects of life, including the military. Armies are now going to be swifter, stronger, more mobile, more deadly, and as we move out of World War I into World War II, we see that exact same occurrence. New technologies are going to also create new weapons. The cavalry and bayonets of the past are now going to meet tanks, machine guns, horts or cannons, and airplanes on the battlefields of Europe. So these new military technologies are going to bring war to another level. And social unrest. Since the Enlightenment, people begin to lose faith in divine right and question their governments. No longer did the poor and oppressed accept that they were destined by God to be poor and oppressed. If you think back to feudalism, the people that were in the serfdom, that were of that status, didn't seek to move out of it because that's where they were placed and they were okay with it. But we don't see that any longer as we move into World War One. And so communist and socialist movements across Europe are going to call for reforms that allowed labor unions, granted greater freedom to the masses, and established more democratic governments. And as these movements grow, monarchs are going to look for ways to unite their countries. They're going to find this in this key word of nationalism, playing upon the nation that you're a part of and what does it mean to be a part of that nation. So, nationalism. Let's look at this word. Number one, it's going to be a uniting force. In countries like Germany, nationalistic movements are going to unite people with a sense of greatness of who they were. Like, we're Americans, and united between we're all Americans, and it's great to be an American. Nationalism takes patriotism and adds to it a sense of superiority that calls for the conquering of the inferior. And in the 19th century, nationalism was expressed as dedication to and identification with the nation state as evidenced by the unification of Germany and Italy. Let's look at some discussion questions over what we just talked about. If you will write answers to these down, we'll talk about these in class. The unification of Germany in the 1870s helped bring on World War I more than 40 years later. Why did German unification cause tension among Europe's powers to rise in those years? Number two, many Europeans in 1914 believed that the two great alliances ensured that no war would disrupt all of Europe. Why do you think so many believed this, and why do you think they were so wrong? Number three, some historians say militarism and nationalism together made many Europeans far too sure that their own country could easily assert itself against other European powers. Explain what these historians mean. Answer those in your notes, and we'll talk about those in class.